This video is dedicated to my friends, my supporting family members, my lovely partner, and my cat. Without you, this video wouldn't exist, and I am so happy to have found a home in all of you. Before this starts, I'd like to give out some warnings. This video deals with topics of parental abuse, including verbal and physical altercations. It also deals with suicidal ideation, heavy panic attacks, and religious trauma. If any of these topics are hard to hear, then you can go ahead and skip this video. I wouldn't want my first impression to be a really bad one. From a young age, I'd always known moving is a natural part of my life. It was something I'd done before I was even conscious enough to remember it. I was an only child on my maternal side throughout about half of my life. I grew up with my mom, and I'd see my dad in the winters. I'd spend my summers with my grandma, and I was a generally happy and cared for kid. In every sense of the word, I was a normal kid, on the surface at least. But behind that, from around the age of 10, I felt something was different. Something was out of place. I started to feel it when, in my last year of elementary school, the kids I'd grown up around since first grade all seemed to have matured to a point, while I stayed the same. I couldn't pinpoint at the time. We all spent all day on computer games. We all still played outside at recess. We all still had a regular bedtime. We were all still kids. So why did I feel different? Why did I feel out of place? I began to see it more and more through middle school. I moved 3 times during middle school. I went to 3 separate schools each year, and in my last year in 8th grade, I finally settled into a rhythm around people who I felt understood me, cared for me, and appreciated me just as I was. I was still the same, hyper, bubbly, a little all over the place, but here it didn't matter, and here it felt safe to be that way. I learned a lot about myself, my identity, and made friendships that lasted years, even to this day. So after all that, why did I still feel different? Why did I still feel incomplete in comparison? In 9th grade, I started to look up, is something wrong with my brain? And from there it spiraled. One thing about me is that I was a sensitive kid. I liked being on my own a lot of the time. I was an only child. Even in family settings, I liked my alone time. As I grew over the years, I gained a lot of cousins, but my independence and need to be on my own stayed. I was the odd one out most of the time. I didn't want to do things with the others. I liked being in my own little world. When I was younger, my world revolved around 2 people, myself and my mom. It was her and me against the world. My dad wasn't absent, but he was only really around during the holiday. So most of the year was filled up with my mom. She was the shoulder to cry on, the one who patched up boo-boos, the one who was there for every graduation from pre-K to high school. My mom did her absolute best as a single parent. She graced me with not 1, but 2 sets of godparents, a life with very little worry, and a full family unit of support in both the home state that I lived in and in her hometown. Safe to say, as a kid, my life felt safe. There were occasional bumps, though. Every few years, I'd have a new stepdad, and they weren't ever all that consistent. And honestly, I think as a kid, I cared less about them because I simply had bigger priorities, even if we lived with them. By a certain point, I got used to not having a solid father figure. And by the time I was 12, I had started to see my dad in a different light, more distant, one I will not get into here. But let's just say I felt lost in the father department. For most of my childhood, my first set of godparents helped me and my mom when I need to be cared for. They picked me up from school, took me out on the weekends, took me to restaurants, parks, and the like. My goddad took me to my first and only ever father-daughter dance, and I remember how happy I was to have him there. My godparents, my goddad specifically, were a huge part of my childhood. I cherished my time with them, and I saw my goddad like a granddad. So in 6th grade, just as I had turned 12, when my goddad suddenly got ill, I think it really broke a part of me. It broke my heart. Death and illness were often a part of my life. I'd been to a lot of funerals as a kid, but it felt foreign because I never knew the person who was dead or dying. They were a figure with a blurred face, someone I may have never met, and if I did, I surely had no recollection of it. They were a stranger. But between 8th and 9th grade, I lost 3 people. My older cousin, then my goddad, then my godmom. 3 deaths that were so close together, and I barely had time to really process it. It's embarrassing to say this, but I didn't attend any of those funerals. I went to the reception of my cousin, but I didn't attend anything for my godparents. My godparents who I cherished, who I loved, who I appreciated. I didn't even really process their disappearance from my life until months later. I didn't realize that I'd lost not just family, but a father figure, one I deeply resonated with. At age 13, just as I was wrapping up my second year of middle school, I met my new stepdad. It was just another guy for me, this time with a kid who was younger than me, but that didn't faze me much. At first, I was cautious, just as cautious as I'd always been. But over time, this random guy grew to be someone who made me laugh, cry. I could even get mad at him. And on top of that, this kid was different. She was autistic. And at first, I didn't really know how to handle that. I was a kid who hadn't really been around a lot of neurodivergent kids. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really nice to her when I first met her. I kind of kept my distance. I hadn't had a lot of stepdads who had kids anyway, and I felt like I wasn't going to know them long enough to really have a connection with her. But I was wrong. I ended up having a deep connection with her, and I ended up defending her one day when 2 girls were making fun of her, something that really deeply sat with me. And her behavior and the way that I took to her made me think, I wonder if I have autism. It was silent. It was a small question in my mind, but it stayed and it grew. I never argued with adults. I never talked back. I never disobeyed. I was the good kid in most situations because I felt like I had to be. I was the one everyone turned to when the other kids asked for things or misbehaved and said, "Oh, wow, you're such a good kid." But this guy, I could be open with him. I could express things that made me upset. One day we were walking in the middle of Sam's Club, and he turned to me and asked me a simple question. "Do you want anything?" And I answered, "No, I don't need anything." He corrected me and reiterated, "I asked, did you want anything? Not do you need anything? You don't really ask for things, you know." That conversation and many other conversations I had with him, from arguments to hearts, resonated deep with me. I never had any person who was a potential father figure really sit with me like this, except for my goddad. And even then, I was too young to have big heart-to-hearts with him. But with this guy, as I went through the harrowing years of becoming a teenager, he handled it with way more grace than I think a lot of previous stepdads might have. I could always annoy him, and he'd brush me off with a laugh. He took my quirky behavior as just me being a unique kid and never made me feel weird. He sat me down and made sure I knew he really truly cared about me and loved me. I think a lot about one of the conversations we had, a one-off conversation that stemmed from me buying a certain shirt for a certain week that led to him saying something that would stick with me even in my adulthood. I don't think I could have asked for a better father figure at that time, because he stepped up when my goddad couldn't anymore. When my goddad passed, and while he was sick, this guy was there for me and filled the void to the point I had no time to notice its presence. COVID hit about as quickly as everyone remembers it does, and it was in the middle of my birthday month. It was a normal month, and then suddenly it wasn't. My birthday happened to fall in the middle of the chaos, and I turned 16, and then one morning, all of a sudden, my mom woke me up. At first, I thought, oh, we're all moving. We'd been discussing moving out together for over a year, but it slowly dawned on me that she didn't mean all of us. She just meant me and her. Suddenly, that reality I'd gotten used to before, the one where a stepdad didn't really stick around for long, was hitting me in the face. It was hitting me like a truck. It came barreling at me, and I had no time to react. The year before, there had been a month where they thought they were going to break up, and when they told me, I was so scared. My younger little stepsister couldn't really articulate what they were talking about, so she didn't really have to deal with the things that I did. Maybe she felt it, but I feel like at that time she didn't really understand what was happening. But I felt it. I felt it hard. I remember I bawled for days. There were nights where I literally stayed up crying to myself, hoping and praying that something would happen that would fix everything. And it did. But here I was a year later, and it was happening again. And this time, I didn't want to feel that hurt. so I numbed it out. I didn't want to face it. Then all of a sudden, the day was there. I had my bags, I hugged my little stepsister goodbye, and then I hugged him. He said, "I'll see you later." And that was it. That was the last time I saw him. Just like that, the world I'd gotten comfortable in, the family unit I finally started to settle in after nearly 3 years, was ripped from under me, shattered into a million pieces. Then we moved into a different apartment, and I had to move schools. The school I'd been in for 2 years was taken away from me. It was one of my most consistent school experiences, and I really thought I would get through high school in the same school, for once. But I didn't. Everything was hitting me so fast I wasn't able to keep myself stable. But my mom was always there. She was there to pick me up. She was there to hug me and hold me when I finally let it all out. She was my safe space. My safe space was still here, and that's all that I needed. Until my safe space wasn't so safe anymore. See, it had always been there. The leering feeling of something dark. But when you're small and you're vulnerable and want to believe that every choice an adult makes is the right one, you ignore a lot of things. A lot of little things. Little actions, little sentences, little outbursts. Things a child shouldn't be on the receiving end of. Things a child shouldn't have to shield themselves from because they're not sure what the next little thing will be that comes crashing down on them. My parent was my rock, my safe person. She was literally my everything. We moved in the first part of 2021 during COVID after leaving our home with my stepdad and my stepsister and then moving to a second apartment where I had to stay at a different school. And everything was scary. After nearly a year of dealing with the effects of the pandemic and having left our last structured family unit, it was just me and my parent again. Me and her and my cat against the world. Just as it had been for years prior, before my stepdad and after all the other stepdads. But something was different this time. I was old enough to finally notice something that was different. The outbursts. Small at first, an annoyed huff, a small fuss here and there, then it accumulates, especially when you've moved from your home state 9 hours away. The only place you've ever lived with less than a month to prepare, no time to say goodbye to friends, and very little time to spend with the family that you're going to say goodbye to forever, the family that you've grown up with for all of your 16 years. And just like that, you leave, and it's gone. See, at first, it was small. My parents' behavior went from normal to debilitating. Years prior, there were small things here and there that my parent did, things I should have had more of an issue with, things she said or did that shouldn't have gone unnoticed by others. When you're an only child, the attention people think you get is spoiling, but for me, it was suffocating. The weight of being the only person my parent could rely on at times, the only one who could listen to her issues, was massive, especially when we're both in a new environment where we don't know anybody. And you're scared at work, and when you come home, the only person you can really talk to is your own kid, your own teenage kid. At some point, it got so bad that I'd find ways to get away from her, even in close proximity. I stayed in my room more, I hung out with friends at their houses more, I slept in the car rides more. I even went on a long 2-week almost trip that ended up getting ruined, where I had to come back early, but it was all to get away, just for a little bit. Anything to get away from it. Another moment where a mistake led to a sudden outburst could just pop up. I was isolated from close friends and family, and all I had was her. I couldn't think of her as being bad. She was my parent. She knew best. She put a roof over my head, clothed me, loved me, and cared for me. She'd worked her ass off since I was a baby to provide for me on her own, even through all her struggles. So how could I get upset if she ever got a little pissed at me or put me down a little bit? It was just words. She was right, I was wrong. She was the adult and I was a child. Me and her against the world, turned to her against me. And she won every time. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could get through a few more years and then maybe she'd mellow. She did for a while when I was at a full-time job right out of high school. And then when I went to college again, everything was okay. For a few months, I had security, but then it fell instantly. Suddenly outbursts happened once again, and they were never all at once, but they were always heavy and the one constant I had. I would make jokes about crying at least once a week, and at some point the sadness always stemmed from something my parents said. I couldn't do things right. I couldn't use my brain. I couldn't follow God the way I was supposed to. I couldn't do it right. What was wrong with me? Why was I so wrong? And then it all felt like the world was caving in. In October 2024, my cat was diagnosed with diabetes. And at first, the pressure felt small. The pressure to make sure that my cat was okay, the pressure to deal with shots, the pressure to see my kitty in pain every time I had to check her blood and her glucose. It was all on me. My parent was usually out or at work or just absent, usually with their significant other, whoever it was at the time, and I was alone. Insulin shots became a normal part of my routine, just me and my cat, and then glucose checks, but they never really worked. I tried so many times, but it always ended up with me crying on the floor and my cat afraid, and I was always alone for it. Every single time I was alone. I was alone when my cat got lethargic once, twice, 3 times. I was alone when my cat got so weak that for the very first time she couldn't even get herself up to eat. The one thing that she loved doing, that she's always loved doing. Every single time she's been sick, all she does is want to eat. But this time she wouldn't, and it scared the shit out of me. I was alone when I called the emergency vet late at night with no way to get to them because I had little money and no license or car to drive. Even when my parent got there and we sat at the vet, I felt alone. My cat went into possible remission, and they couldn't be sure yet, but they thought her dose should be decreased to almost a stop. Then she got lethargic again, and so the next day I called to see if maybe the doses should be stopped completely. But before that, my mom had said, maybe you should stop it altogether. Without the vet's permission, she was just like, yeah, maybe this is a sign that she's getting better. She said it was a sign from God. Around that time, I was dealing with a lot of religious stuff, including not going to church because I didn't really feel resonated with it. And part of that's because I'm a lesbian, and I didn't really feel comfortable in the church anymore. So in the middle of all of this stress that I was having with my cat, my mom thought that God was trying to talk to me and that God was putting my cat in remission. So when I called the vet that day and there was a misunderstanding somewhere, my mom called me, and suddenly I was the bad guy. And because of a small misunderstanding, suddenly I was trying to kill my cat. All because I was trying to check on my cat's health and see if she still needed shots. She said that God was trying to talk to me through my cat. He healed her as a sign that I need to go back to being right with him, that I need to go back to church. I wasn't going to church because it made me uncomfortable. Years of listening to condemnation of queer people had made me feel no longer safe there. But my parent insisted that God was trying to get me to see the right way. Through my cat's remission, God was trying to speak to me. And because I refused to stop giving my cat her insulin, because I listened to the vets instead of my parent, because I wanted to take care of my cat, I was apparently killing her. I was killing my cat, and I was selfish for not listening. I wasn't a kid anymore. I could hear this now. And if I couldn't handle being yelled at, if I wanted to scream back, I could find my own way home because I was on campus when we were having this call, literally crying my eyes out, screaming at her while she screamed back at me, and all I could feel was embarrassment. I don't really remember how many times it happened. Me ending up on a bench on my college campus, crying and shaking as I tried to calm myself. My friend on the other side of the phone, having to sit through the deep panic attacks that ensued when my parent ran amok on my emotions. It happened so often that seasons changed, and I'd find myself sitting out there, shivering in the cold in the middle of winter or in the warm sun during mid-spring. I would sit and want to disappear. Poof. There was no want to hurt myself, no want for death. I just wanted to disappear altogether. No pain, no more suffering. I'd had enough suffering. I'd had enough being anxious. I'd had enough crying. I'd had enough anger. I could barely feel anger. All of it was just tears and hurt. And I wanted that pain to go away. I wanted it to stop. I wanted to just be gone. The mental abuse in this new state had gone on for 4 years, past my senior year and into my college years. This constant outpour of heaviness. My parent would say little things implying how much I burdened her, but I was still adamant that I was the one wrong whenever my friends would try to tell me that this wasn't right. They finally said that my parents' actions sounded like abuse. And I started to say it sounded like abuse too, but there was a part of me that just couldn't get it to sit, to feel like it was actually abuse, because it was all words. That was all it was. Words aren't abuse. They don't mean anything because they don't hurt you physically. That's what I thought. My parent was just a little stressed. She was just a little hurt. Something was wrong. When she was stressed, it was natural to want to vent about it. And it was natural to get a little angry when I would make a mistake. I was making life hard. I needed to be better. If I was better, things would get better. If I was just a little more aware, my parent wouldn't have to yell at me or berate me or make me feel small. If I was a little bit easier to deal with, she wouldn't have to yell at me. She wouldn't have to pour her emotions into me. She wouldn't have to be stressed all the time. If I could drive, she wouldn't have to drive me everywhere like I was having to have her be a chauffeur. If I could do just one more thing right, On March 11th at 7 in the morning, as I got ready for school, my parent got so angry that I opened the wrong door to let her in the house that she yelled and screamed at me, and then grabbed my wrists and pushed me headfirst into our couch, putting all of her weight on me at once. Just minutes before, she saw police lights while outside and panicked, trying to get into the house, but the door was locked. We had gotten a new storm door, and she couldn't figure out how to open it yet, so she told me to open the door while on the phone with me. But I opened the side door because for nearly 2 years we used the side door only because the front door would let bugs in if opened. And because I opened the wrong door, the only necessary response my parent could think of when I finally argued back with her when she screamed at me was to physically assault me. It happened so quickly that by the time I was processing it, I had ran next door on the damp grass in the dark with only one sock on because I had kicked it off while kicking and screaming under my parents' weight. And I was sitting in my neighbor's couch, crying my eyes out. And as she asked me what had happened, everything all at once burst out of me in big gasps, heavy tears, and coughs as I tried to catch my breath while my neighbor held me and tried her hardest to comfort me in my shaken up state. The words, the torment, the abuse, that is what it was. My mother was no longer there when the hands were on me. Honestly, she hadn't been there when only the words were the things that were used against me. But it was finally clear as day. I was being abused, and I let it go on for so long that she escalated. I called my friend. She and her parent came with me as I grabbed only my bag, my cat, and some of her food, and I finally left. And funnily enough, after all those years of saying that my parent didn't mean what she'd said or how she'd acted, after years of defending her and bending over backwards to tell my friends that the stories of her emotionally abusing me weren't that bad, after all of that, my parent acted snarky, apathetic, and according to my friend, as I packed my bag that day to leave, called me the crazy one. To this day, a year later, she still reaches out, trying to get me to forgive her, trying to get me to mend things and not hold on to hate, because that's the right thing to do. But I've grown a lot in a year. Therapy and medication, finally getting a proper diagnosis of ADHD does that to you. You finally get your head on straight. You learn how to set boundaries, how not to let yourself be stepped on, how to mend the brokenness in your heart. You learn that all those words over the years, all those tiny things that maybe didn't feel so big back then, accumulated into a giant looming heap. A heap of memories that stuck to you more than you thought. You learn that many nights will be hard, especially the first, when you wake up in a bed that's not your own and remember that your parent wasn't who you thought they were. For years, my mom was one person and the other was a monster. That was a distinction I made. But it turned out my mother was just both of those people, all along. She carried a kind face and a comforting aura, but stress made her feel justified in being unkind, unfeeling, and unapologetic. The biggest thing I've learned in the time that I've been away is that I don't owe people forgiveness or understanding. I can easily see things from someone's viewpoint and make explanations for why they did things in the heat of the moment, but intentions don't always justify action. My parent says that now she never intended to hurt me, but she did. I think a lot about if I could have died that morning. Many people don't take me seriously when I say it. Honestly, the fact that I'm alive right now and that I survived all those years was enough to kickstart me wanting more for myself. I have a lot of things to live for. I have people who deeply care for me and love me, and I want to have a future. The future no longer includes my mom. I'm going to share a long message I wrote a few months ago after I left. When I left my home officially, just days after being told to leave, I left my parent a very lengthy letter. A letter that I'd written just a week or two before everything that went over my abuse, my sexuality, my pain, and the anguish I'd felt. What exactly I was upset about, and why I had held back on telling anyone for years of my abuse. I didn't even tell them why I became that way, because they're not ready for that conversation clearly. Yet somehow both my parent and many other family members only saw what they wanted in that letter, and it feels as though none of them actually read it. I have yet to tell my family that my parents proceeded to send an email to me saying she'd remove me as beneficiary on my life insurance and bank account, along with her name as a contributor on my FAFSA. Some of my family members are blind, especially my grandmother, who has done nothing but say she doesn't support my sexuality and then also victim blame me when talking about my parent and how I need to reconnect with her and give her a second chance. I gave her a second chance, and then a third chance, and a fourth chance. My friends, who were all in Maryland and could do nothing to help me because she took away my entire support system, will attest to the fact that I am unapologetically defensive of her for the entirety of the 4 years that she abused me. She had hit me once with an object long before these 4 years happened, and I kept my mouth shut. It wasn't a hard hit, but it stuck with me. All I had done was tell her that I had done something, and she decided that that was enough to hit me in the face. I always said that it wasn't a hard hit for years, but that didn't matter, because after that for years, when she'd yell at me, I'd flinch, I'd back away, and I'd nearly cover myself when she was too close. I knew in the back of my mind that someone who hits you once, no matter how long it happened to go, or how soft or how hard it was, is never guaranteed to not hit you again. That day when she put her hands on me, her weight on me, I saw a monster. That was not my mother. She saw tears in my eyes, on my face, multiple times, for years, and somehow didn't register all in that time that maybe she needed to rethink how she approached situations, especially when she was stressed. I was so forgiving of her stupid fucking stress. She may have been stressed from work when we moved here. Her coworkers sucked, and I knew, and I comforted her through that. But she took me away from everyone I grew up with, the only state I knew as a home. She took me away from my family that I grew up with. She took me away from my friends, and she isolated me. And after she isolated me, she used her words to hurt me. On and on and on and over and over and over again, she used her words to manipulate me into thinking that I was a horrible human being because I couldn't do everything she said right. I was making small mistakes, but to her, the adult, everything was a horrible mistake that I could not take back, and I need to grow up. I need to get better. I need to use my head. She says she has no idea that she was hurting me, that she has no idea what she was doing. She just wanted to pretend. How do I know? Because the year leading up to me leaving, she continuously asked if we were okay. Sometimes unprompted, and others, it was right after she ripped into me and left me in absolute tears. She would turn around from becoming a monster and turn into my mom, the loving, caring mom that I knew. And she would pretend she felt bad, throwing nice words, love bombing me. My best friend should not have had to be my biggest support during all that. We were both kids, and he was 9 hours away from me. Yet he was there for me every night, every single day, that I sat alone in my house, in a corner in my room, with my door closed so she wouldn't hear me on the camera when I cried my eyes out and wondered what I did to deserve this as my future. Just years ago, at 14, I was happy, healthy, bubbly, and joyful. I was the best version of myself and unapologetically myself. Then she broke me, tore into a little girl who only held her up on a pedestal, ignored how upset I was when we moved, and somehow she didn't know. She took money from me, belittled me, made me feel like I needed to disappear, not die, disappear, for it to finally stop. And somehow she deserves an apology too. Somehow I also need to be forgiven. I was 16 when this started, and she was a grown-ass woman who couldn't regulate her feelings. The day I left, she looked so uncaring. She didn't even talk to me the day I got all my stuff out of the house. I hope these 4 months have been as torturous for her as the 4 years were for me, because she'll have plenty of time to reflect on them from now on, while I'm openly and wholeheartedly telling people what happened to me through words and art, which I've held back on for years. Honestly, I won't say that it was easy when I left. Things were extremely hard. Turns out learned trauma responses don't disappear overnight just because you're not in the environment anymore. I still scramble when I hear a car pull up to where I am. I still have nightmares where I wake up thinking I hear my parent calling me. I still get scared that I'm killing my cat whenever she gets a little bit sick. Still need affirmation from friends and from my partner that they love me because my parent told me twice in my life that they didn't care for me as much as I cared about them. At the end of the day, I still have a lot of healing to do. But in a year, I've grown into quite a different person. Well, I've started to find myself again. The person I was years ago, before 16. I feel like that bubbly kid I used to be, who was confident in themselves and who they were. I feel more headstrong. I feel more lively. I feel more productive. My schedule is nearly always full now, in contrast to a year ago when I'd spend most of my time only on campus, at school, or holed up inside my room. I've gained a loving, caring, talented partner who's been through a lot too, and we're both working to improve ourselves and lift each other up. My partner is someone I've known for years, someone I deeply trust and who lets me know every day that I am so deeply cherished and appreciated for just being here and existing. I have friends who've been there for me through thick and thin and who kept reaching out to me, checking on me, and letting me know that they're proud of me. I have family who tell me how strong I am, how happy they are that I'm doing well, and let me know that they have my back. A year ago, I couldn't see just how much support I had because my parent made me feel isolated, alone, and told me more than once that the people I loved didn't care for me as much as I did for them. She was entirely wrong. She was so far off because the people who truly cared enough to keep in touch with me, despite any distance we may have had, stood up for me and protected me. They made me feel wanted, safe, and they're the reason I'm here today. They're the reason I realize that I am truly loved and that I am abundantly full of love. And I will appreciate them every single day. Hi, thanks for watching this video. I'm so glad that you were able to get through it if you did. It's a really long one and it's got a lot of baggage. So thank you for sticking around this long and listening to my story. I haven't uploaded a video like this, like a story time like this, since the first time I introduced myself, which was years ago. And honestly, this is kind of a crazy video to just like slap on to all of the other videos that I have right now, but I really hope that you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it, and maybe subscribe. It's also my birthday, so I'm going to go celebrate my birthday now. Yippee! I'm 22. Have a good day. Bye.